If you're like me, the phrase back in my day brings up all sorts of memories from your younger years. Perhaps you're reminded of simpler times before the world got crazy. Or maybe you like to employ this phrase to let all the youngsters know how easy they have it compared to what you had to endure. Either way, if you're around 30 years old or more, one thing you don't remember from back in your day is a little thing we like to call the mobile device. The world has changed and today's kids are all at risk of turning into techno zombies. What are we supposed to do? Let's chat about it. Welcome to Clear Creek Chat. That's Chat with two T's because this podcast is coming to you from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and is a ministry of the Clear Creek Church of Christ. In each episode, we gather together a few of our friends to talk about issues that touch our lives locally and have broader implications for the kingdom of God. My name is Mitchell Halstead, and today I'm joined by my fellow minister, Laura Harbin.
Hey.
Who is our children's minister, and a good friend of mine, Jason Brazier.
Hello.
Jason Brazier is the former youth minister at Red Bank Church of Christ, but now he's a full-time counselor with Greater Chattanooga Christian Services. And as a bonus, Jason will be hosting an online seminar for our parents on October 19th concerning today's topic. If you'd like to participate and hear Jason dig even deeper into the issues you're about to hear discussed, head to clearcreekcoc.org and look up our upcoming activities page for details. Jason, welcome to the podcast, man.
Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you. Well, as I teased in our over-dramatic open, we're diving into the incredibly complex and challenging world of helping our kids navigate this digital landscape. This will actually be a two-parter, with the first episode exploring the reality we find ourselves in. And in the second, we will look at ways our families can take proactive steps toward creating healthy digital habits. But first, I'd like to ask each of you to tell about your families, to all of our tens of listeners, just a little bit about what your family looks like, kind of kids you've got, and the main way that your kids use digital devices.
All right. Well, I'll go first. I'm married to Ben, and we have two sons, ages 9 and 11. And our main digital devices are the TV, Xbox, iPads, and our phones.
Just equally spread.
They love apps, they love YouTube, and they love games.
All the things.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. What about you, Jason?
Yeah, so my family consists of my wife, Amanda, and our two boys, Elliot and Judah. Elliot's 3, Judah is 5. So we're pretty early on in the use of the screens. I feel like we do pretty well, but it's always ever increasing. And particularly since we chose virtual learning, it might have been a mistake, but we chose it. And we're having to use the screen a lot more than we had planned. So that's happening with school a lot right now for Judah, our new kindergartner. Also, pretty consistent diet of PBS Kids after nap time that they really want to get in there. And also, sometimes they watch me play video games to the chagrin of my wife, Amanda, who does not like video games and thinks it's not helpful for anyone's development. She might be right, but, I still do it, so.
Well, my wife, her name is Kayla, and my son is Hunter. He's 8 years old, so he is also newly coming into the digital device world. But his primary one is probably the Nintendo Switch that we got him a couple years ago, or he maybe got it for Christmas. But he loves it. He would play it every moment of the day if we let him, and sometimes maybe we do, to the chagrin of exactly what we're going to talk about today.
That's right.
We're like everyone else, right? We make mistakes. We don't get it right all the time, which is why this is important to us as well. That's why we're talking about it. So regarding this idea of back in our day, we're all similar age here. We didn't have these fancy smartphones, smart watches, smart homes, smart cars, iPads, and the works, whatever else they got nowadays. We didn't have any of that stuff back when we were kids. For the sake of all the other parents who perhaps haven't thought about this until now, just how different is the world today? Jason, why don't you take this one first?
Yeah, so I've got a few thoughts on this. So I'm going to reference something that I'm going to bring up through the seminar and probably some other time today. It's a book by Kara Powell called Navigating Our Digital World. And so she makes the distinction in the first few chapters of this book about digital citizens versus digital natives. And so us in this room grew up in a time when we experienced this time pre-iPhone, this mobile device that became so powerful and amazing. We lived in a time where I remember when we didn't have that, and you just talked about that. But the kids that are growing up now in your youth ministry and your children's ministry, they are called digital natives, is what she says. They didn't ask to be born into this world. They just grew up in it. And we can't blame them and tell them these stories because they don't have any reference point, you know? So it is very different, and we can't blame them for that. It's all they know. But in my day, I did have video games that I just mentioned that are still around today. I had TV that I watched a lot. I can probably relate to the latchkey idea, you know, of I just, that was my babysitter a lot, you know, watching TV. But I was talking to Laura earlier that the accessibility of it is different, though. Like, if I wanted to play video games or if I wanted to watch TV, I didn't drag the TV screen into the bathroom with me, like pretty much what happens today. You know, that I can have my screen wherever I want it to be, and I have this computer that we all grew up with that took a lot of time to start up, and it made a lot of weird noises. But right now, this very tiny device that I'm holding up is so much more powerful than that desktop, you know, big tower that I spent my time growing up on.
Yeah, so true. What about you, Laura? How do you think things have changed?
I do think the accessibility is totally ramped up. And all of our work and all of our schoolwork now that we're seeing is all shifting to a digital platform. So schools are implementing it. Schools are teaching digital citizenship at a very young age, probably second grade even, I would say. And it's just, like you said, it's a part of their world. They don't know that never existed before. And I think we'll see the implications of that for years to come.
They don't know the vinyl records and 8-tracks and all that
They
stuff,
don't.
right? Well, let's move on a little bit here. So why does this conversation matter? What is at stake if parents don't help kids establish these healthy habits when they're young?
I think the main thing is because we're not going back to that time.
That's for sure.
As much as many would like to, it's not. Technology's just going to advance more and more, and it's going to be a part of our lives. And if it is, then we should probably get a better handle on it. If it's sticking around and it's going to be so much a part of our lives, we should be very mindful of the ways that we are using it. And also, there are great tools and assistance that we can get from the internet and screens and all that. But with every advancement, I think there's always a sinister element to it, a side effect, whatever you want to think of, like in the realm of drugs and all that. There's a side effect that we really need to be mindful of. I'm going to say the word mindful a lot today, I feel like.
It's a good word.
But that's really, really important. So if we're letting it be a part of our family's lives so much, let's just really think about where is it and where should it be? Is it between us, or is it something that's helping us connect, or is it coming between us and disconnecting us, you know?
Sure. Now, children, Laura, you work with the children of our young people age range. So how do you feel like you've seen the stakes with this?
Well, right now with the digital learning, you have the option. Do I go to school? Do I not? And then that takes away what he's pointing towards is the connection. They're losing the peer connection, the social connection at a very critical developmental stage in their life, you know, under age 10 and below. And so that's where you learn your skills. That's where you learn your social skills going forward into your adolescence, into adulthood. And if you have that removed, what is that going to leave us with? And so it's worth paying attention to, much like we would pay attention to anything else going on in our science world and how it's affecting people and their behavior.
Sure. That is kind of the extreme version. People become so pulled apart that they forget how to relate to each other in person. I want to make a quick point here. You know, we talked a lot about how the kids are going to get messed up through all this, but they're certainly not the only guilty party when it comes
Right.
to being obsessive about their technology, right? I think we adults are just as easily and just as much, maybe more, arguably, tech obsessed even than they are. As you said, Jason, they're technology natives, and we are not, but we have easily adapted to the world of technology and made it a major factor. So let's talk about screen time for a minute, because that's a phrase you hear a lot. Like, what various forms can screen time take?
Yeah, so just help me think through here. The tools, I mentioned tools earlier of how it assists us. So I use it to get from one point to another. I knew how to get from GCCS to Clear Creek, but I wanted to check Google Maps to make sure that I knew the fastest route that I could get here. So it helps us navigate, to different spots in a lot of different ways. It helps us connect through social media platforms, or that's the intended purpose, to connect. There are screens and devices through, and I don't know, are we talking about different expressions of them, or are we talking about like the physical form of it, a TV versus a smartphone versus a computer, a laptop? There's all those different ways. There's your refrigerator, that has a smart screen in it, all sorts of amazing screens that are available physically, but there's those expressions of them. Screen time is now for learning in a big way, even more so than it's ever been. And we would all say, yeah, education is great and learning is important, but it's a lot. Are there any other that come to your mind?
Reading the newspaper. Mm-hmm. Now people check their news apps. Listening to a book. Listening to a TV show while they're going down the road. They can't watch it, but they can listen.
That's dangerous, Laura.
It is. I don't do that.
If you're driving.
If you're the one driving. Yeah. Oh, but I would think it's replacing what, your paper, your eye and hand movement. It's replacing that.
A lot more thumbs now.
Definitely more thumbs. And it's easier. It's quicker to get a text out than sit down and write in a formal email. It's just
sure
quicker.
Do either of you, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. Do either of you think that there's a particular form of screen time that's inherently more problematic for a kid? Like, is staring at a small phone, worse than watching a giant television? Or is having a smartwatch connected to them that they're constantly checking throughout the day different than open up their iPad when they get home? Like, is there a difference in these different forms of screens?
Yes, I believe so. I think shared screens are always better than individualized screens. I can go back kind of to this big overall connection is a big part of this for me. And so I'm going to go back to, the beginning of the Bible when God warns us it's not good for man to be alone. And some screens I can just do by myself, and I can bury my head in this. But some I have to sit on a couch with you to watch this movie, and we have to agree upon which one we're going to do and all that stuff. But that's better for a family, I think, a shared screen experience than just me, having bad posture. There is, a now posture where it's called, adolescent boy gaming posture that
Awesome.
happens. That's not the technical term, but it's something like that.
Sounds scientific to me.
It really messes up our body because of just how much we're bending our neck looking down at this screen. Anyways.
Wow.
So shared screens versus just my own individual screen. I think certain screens are better than others. Any other thoughts? I had another thought and I lost it.
Well, we're going to come back and talk about how the COVID era has affected this in our next segment. So I think we're probably going to wrap it up for this one. But thank you guys for your thoughts on this. And of course, recording this, we'll be right back. But I guess those of you that are listening will have to catch this the next week. That's all the time we've got for part one of this chat. I do want to thank Jason and Laura for sharing their thoughts with us today. Join us for part two as we shift our conversation to what we as adults can do to help our kids navigate our digital world. Remember, if you are a disciple, it is your job to spread the good news of Jesus Christ to your neighbors throughout your city and to the ends of the earth. Grace and peace.